So here we have one lecture that we're wanting to try and do one of our daily reviews, that cost system of completing our notes, organizing our notes, and summarizing our notes, and then finally testing ourselves. So if we're looking at one specific lecture, this student came in, it was for Econ 281. They said that they felt that this was pretty unorganized. I was able to hold on to this one and keep it. And so what we want to do is we just want to go through slide by slide, having a look at just the headings. What we would typically do is you would have taken some notes on here, probably have some squiggles on the side here, any symbols or your notes that you've added on to this. This student printed these ones off fresh, so we didn't have those notes. So you would have had some sort of completed notes on the top there. But one of their main complaints was that it just felt very unorganized. What we saw on first inspection was right away we actually had little bullet points right here that just said, hey, this is what we're going to talk about today. Now the way that we want to make this organized typically is to create an outline. This has an outline, we just numbered it, or in this case lettered it, and we went through and just tried to find out where all these headings are. And so when we're creating an outline, we're just going to try and identify title, and then our headings, and then any subheadings that may be in. Here we see we've got a main heading, and then we've got a small subheading here. That's all we want to go through and do, and we'll create that outline. By doing that, we get to see how it's organized. Then we can go into having a look as we go through, how are the details organized. For example, we can have a quick look here and saying, okay, this here is organized by economics. This here is just the answer to this question. This is a definition answering that question. This here, I guess, is a type of visual representation. I'd say this is just a diagram or a flow chart of some sort. So we can just label what's on that slide. So as we go through, we can just continue to do that. We've got heading, subheading. On here, I'm guessing this is a definition. It says the Greek, and then it has some questions that are related to macroeconomics. These two slides are associated together. I've got macroeconomics, so immediately I can see, because of my training, we can see that this is going to be a matrix of some sort. This is a table. I can have microeconomics on one side, macroeconomics on the other side. It's saying Greek twice and questions twice. So I know that's how I set up my table. So I can see how this information is organized as I go through. I jumped ahead a little bit. Let's have a quick look at what we had done. We just go through looking at that one by one. How is it all organized? So here, what we're pretty used to is just creating a normal one-page outline. Here's my outline. We just copied that down straight away. We went through, and section A had a definition for part A, and it had that diagram. Section B had microeconomics, had a definition, Greek, and some examples. So we put that down. We know that's going to be a table. In the tools part, economic tools, we had two sections, economics and mathematical. Economics had these sections, these subheadings, and then there were sub-subheadings. Under mathematical, they had 3 different types, so we know this is going to be a table as well. As soon as I've got mathematical tools, as soon as there's plural, I know that I can compare and contrast these. So I can go through and say, okay, what kind of table am I going to make? Here, there was an example and a definition. In the other slides, there was the definition, the concept, and then an example, concept, example. So I know that I've got my matrix all organized. And then part D had a whole bunch of slides that just had definition of that thing, an example, and its significance. Again, another table. We've got comparing and contrasting these types of analysis. Pretty straightforward. So now we can go through, once we've made the outline, just a linear fashion, this is what you'd be used to, we can go through and start making visual representations. So this here is a one-page summary of the entire lecture. Now it doesn't have all the details, so we have to go through and find those details. What we can first do is we can do a visual hierarchical structure of this entire lecture. This here is economics. We gave it a heading, we had tools, and we had analysis. Look over here, we've got economics, these 2 types, tools, and then the analysis. So we've got those 3 things we talked about today. Then under economics, we've got the science, we've got micro and macro. Tools, we had the 2 different types, and then under analysis, the 2 different types, and just what they're called. Pretty straightforward. This is a wonderful way to help us start summarizing one whole lecture. What's easier to review? Reread these, reread this, or reread this and rewrite this. Again, this is working with that visual spatial memory that we know is so powerful. Next is diving into the details. So now we have to go through section A. Let's go through. We know that there was a diagram, so let's make sure that we go through and we can have those details in there. We know that section B was a table. It was the two different types of microeconomics, so we want to go through and fill in those details. Once we had a look, there was a little bit more that we added on once we started having a look at those details. The same for the tools. We can go through and have a look at those details. We found that one slide was actually a diagram and it was an analogy, which was really helpful and very visual. What's easier to review, that one slide that described this, or this diagram with the arrows and the labels? And again, here's our mathematical tools, 3 different types of tools and how we can compare and contrast them. We can start seeing that there's major differences between these. And then finally, one last table for the analysis part. Again, we're able to now compare and contrast and see those things. Instead of slide by slide, we're looking at them and joining all those dots, connecting those dots. What we can see here is the next part. The student, I didn't do, so that there's organizing. We didn't do the summarizing in the session, so what we did is we skipped ahead and started making a list of questions. Now these 10 questions were based on the documents that we had right there. We went through our organization of the topic, and we just started asking questions about what we were looking at. And that there's how you do a daily review. That there is one. If you have to review for your weekly review and you had to review 3 lectures, if this econ class was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you'd be reviewing these. Instead of reviewing 3 of these with just your notes scrambled on them, you'd now have 3 of these to go through. Seeing how, reminding yourself how this information is organized, and also conceptually and factually and skillfully testing yourself. Very powerful stuff. I want to show you one more quick example. What we'll do is, this one is exactly the same on a larger scale. This is one, I think this is 2 lectures, this is 2 lectures, and then this was, I think this is joined together. This is the 3rd lecture. What we're able to do, the exact same process, all we asked of the student was to create that outline. We made, from those 3-4 lectures, preparing for a final exam, we just made the linear outline, one after the other. Keep making the outline, just looking at headings, subheadings, and sub-subheadings. Going through and just adding in what was on the slides and just going through and creating that visual outline. As we're going through, you can even see that we're looking at the information as we go, and we sketched out, okay, this is going to be a table because it's 4 different types, and we can see how to put those 4 types into a matrix. What we wanted to do then, after we made that 6-page outline of those 3 weeks of lectures, we're able to create a 1-page visual. This here is spatially organized into 3 different topics, 3 different main topics, and then each topic is broken down. What we were able to see is that they all built on each other and they actually flowed across in a perfectly logical and reasonable manner. Then they had to go through and do the details, just like we did in the last one. This one here we did the overview, and then the student went away and they were able to also start off. We didn't do the summary part in our session, we ran out of time for that, but what we did is we just started off making some questions. The student did mention that for this class in the final that he went away with a study group and he was able to, working with this material, they came up with 50 questions between the 3 or 4 of them. They said that they predicted somewhere between 15 and 20 of the questions on the final. So again, we know this stuff works. It is very straightforward. It's incredibly systematic. We create organizational structure by creating an outline, which is familiar to students. Then we use those graphical representations of hierarchies, flowcharts, diagrams, and the matrix, the tables, which are so powerful. They hold so much information, and they allow us to connect more dots than we can if we were doing it one at a time. Trying to memorize 16 facts instead of trying to build all of these 16 individual facts, instead of trying to build all of these several multiples of connections, which make it much easier to recall later on. Then we must also practice testing ourselves. We've stored it. Now we've created meaning out of it by connecting dots. Now we need to test that meaning and practice recalling it so that we're good to go for our exams. All right, catch you in the next one.